I never expected to find myself in a Tinder horror story. I mean, how could swiping through potential dates on a dating app lead to any kind of terror? But let me tell you, what happened to me was beyond anything I could have imagined. I never really understood the hype around dating apps like Tinder, but my friends kept pressuring me to try it out. They said it was a great way to meet new people and potentially find the love of your life. So one day, after a few glasses of wine, I finally gave in and downloaded the app. I swiped left and right, not really expecting much. But then, I came across his profile. His name was Mark, and he had the most beautiful blue eyes I had ever seen. I nervously swiped right, and to my surprise, we matched. I couldn't believe my luck. We started chatting and immediately hit it off. He was funny, charming, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We exchanged numbers, and within a few days, we were texting each other nonstop. Mark was a busy guy, but he always made time for me. We would talk for hours on end, and I felt like I was falling for him. He said all the right things and made me feel like I was the only girl in the world. One day, he asked me if I wanted to meet up in person. I was hesitant at first, but my friends convinced me that I should take a chance. So we made plans to meet at a small coffee shop near my apartment. I arrived early and nervously waited for him to arrive. When he finally showed up, my heart skipped a beat. He was even more handsome in person, and I could tell he was just as nervous as I was. We ordered our drinks and started talking. Just like our conversations over text, everything flowed so easily. I felt like I had known him my whole life. We laughed and talked for hours, losing track of time. As the sun started to set, Mark asked if I wanted to take a walk with him. I agreed, feeling giddy and excited. We walked hand in hand, enjoying each other's company. But then, Mark suddenly stopped and turned to me with a serious expression. He told me that he needed to show me something before we continue on our date. I was a little taken aback, but I went along with it. He led me to an old abandoned house just a few blocks from the coffee shop. I was beginning to feel uneasy, but I didn't want to ruin the moment. I followed him inside, hoping it was just a little detour before we continued our date. But as soon as we stepped inside, I knew something was off. The air was heavy and there was a strange smell in the air. I looked at Mark, but he seemed completely calm. He just smiled at me and led me further into the house. We came to a room with a small table and 2 chairs. On the table, there were some candles and a large book open to a page with a strange symbol drawn on it. I started to feel panicked and wanted to leave, but Mark grabbed my hand and pulled me closer. He told me that he wanted to show me his true self. Before I could even comprehend what he was saying, he transformed right in front of my eyes. His beautiful blue eyes turned into a deep shade of red and his skin started to peel away, revealing a hideous creature underneath. I screamed and tried to run, but Mark was too strong. He whispered in my ear that he had been searching for someone like me, someone who wouldn't be scared off by his true form. He said that he wanted to make me his forever. I was paralyzed with fear as he dragged me towards the table. And then, I blacked out. When I woke up, I was back at the coffee shop, sitting at the same table where I had first met Mark. But he was nowhere to be found. I couldn't believe what had just happened. I quickly left and deleted Tinder from my phone, vowing to never use a dating app again. To this day, I still have nightmares about that night. I can't help but wonder if I had swiped left, would I have avoided this Tinder horror story? But one thing is for sure, I will never trust a dating app again. I have used Tinder on and off for a couple of years now. I've also tried a few other dating apps, but when I moved to Denver, Tinder was the most popular one. I remember the first time I came across his profile. His pictures caught my attention, and his bio was witty. I swiped right and put my phone away for the night. When I checked my phone again the next day, I was thrilled to see that we had matched. We started chatting right away, and I was immediately drawn to his charm, intelligence, and sense of humor. Our conversations were easy and comfortable, and we talked about our interests, jobs, and families. We connected almost instantly and decided to meet up at a coffee shop in the city. I was nervous about whether he would be as great in person as he was online, but as soon as I saw him, all my worries melted away. He was tall and handsome with a warm smile, and he looked even better than his pictures. We hugged, sipped our coffee, and laughed about silly things that didn't even matter. It felt like I had known him for years, and I couldn't wait to see him again. We started seeing each other more and more often and explored the city together. We went to restaurants, museums, parks, and just walked around enjoying each other's company. We talked about our hopes, dreams, fears, doubts, and plans for the future. I felt like I had found someone who truly understood me, someone who made me feel loved. However, things began to change as time went on. He would constantly text me, even when I was at work or with friends. If I didn't reply right away, he would get upset and accuse me of ignoring him. He would show up at my apartment unannounced, even when I had other plans. At first, I thought it was a sign of his affection, a way of showing me how much he cared, but it became overbearing and suffocating. I tried talking to him about it, but he would become defensive and angry, accusing me of flirting with other guys and not really loving him. None of it was true, and it felt like he was living in a different reality, where I was the only source of his happiness and meaning in life. I felt like I was always walking on eggshells around him and couldn't do anything without feeling guilty or anxious. His calls and texts became exhausting, and I started to dread them. I felt like I couldn't be by myself anymore or talk to my friends or do the things I enjoyed. One day he showed up at my workplace and started causing a scene when I tried to tell him to leave. My coworkers had to call security to get him out, and it was embarrassing. Luckily, my boss was understanding, and he just told me to take a break and cool down. I was grateful that he didn't fire me over it. I am fond of my colleagues at work. Following that incident, I knew that I had to end my relationship with him. I tried to do it gently over the phone, but he refused to accept it. He begged me to give him another chance, promising that he would change and never do anything like that again. But deep down, I knew that things wouldn't get better. I needed to get away from him before things got worse. Then he started sending me even more messages. At first, his messages were pleading and desperate, telling me how much he loved and needed me. However, they quickly turned into angry threats, accusing me of leading him on or betraying him. He would send me pictures of me and my friends taken from social media and say things like, "I know where you are and I'm watching you." He would show up at places he knew I'd be, trying to catch a glimpse of me. I was scared and didn't know what to do. I tried blocking his number, but he would just create new ones. I changed my social media settings to make them private, but he still found ways to see my posts. Even when I went to the police, they said there wasn't much they could do unless he actually hurt me. It was crazy. One night when I was home alone watching TV, I heard a noise from outside my apartment. When I went to the window, I saw him standing there staring at me. I panicked, locked all the doors and windows, and then called the police. He started pounding on the door, trying to open it. I could hear him trying to break down the door, but it was too strong. When the police arrived, he was arrested and he spent the night in jail. I found out that he was really drunk at the time. He was released the next day, but I was eventually granted a restraining order because of that incident. After that, things got a lot better, but I never found out what made the difference. Perhaps it was the fear of legal consequences, or maybe his friends and family stepped in to help. Whatever it was, I'm grateful that things didn't escalate any further. It has been 2 years now, and I'm still afraid that I'll run into him somewhere. If that happens, I'm not sure what I'll do. I had just moved to a new city and didn't know anyone. My job kept me busy during the day, and by the time I got home, I was too exhausted to go out and meet people. So, as any millennial would do, I turned to dating apps to try and find some companionship. After swiping through countless profiles, I finally found a match on Tinder. Let's call him Mark. He seemed nice, and we hit it off right away. We talked for hours, and I was excited to finally have someone to hang out with. We decided to meet up for a drink at a local bar. I was a little nervous, but Mark seemed so charming and funny that I quickly eased into the date. We had a great time, and before I knew it, it was already midnight. I didn't want the night to end, so Mark suggested we go back to his place to watch a movie. As soon as we got to his apartment, I noticed that something felt off. The air was thick and heavy, and there was an eerie silence. But I brushed it off, thinking I was just being paranoid. We sat down on the couch, and Mark put on a horror movie. I'm not usually a fan of scary movies, but I didn't want to ruin the mood, so I pretended to enjoy it. But as the movie progressed, I couldn't shake off the feeling that someone was watching us. I tried to ignore it and focus on the movie, but then I noticed Mark's phone was lighting up with notifications. He quickly turned it over to hide it from my view. I didn't think much of it at the time, but looking back now, I wish I had. Suddenly, the power went out. I let out a little scream, and Mark laughed, saying that it must be a blackout. But then I saw a figure standing in the corner of the room, staring at us. I froze in fear, and Mark jumped up, claiming it was just the shadows playing tricks on us. He turned on a flashlight and shone it towards the corner, but there was no one there. I knew I saw someone, but Mark insisted I was just being paranoid. But then, I heard it. A faint whisper, coming from the corner of the room. I couldn't make out what it was saying, but it sounded angry. I grabbed my stuff and ran out of the apartment, barely stopping to put my shoes on. I never saw Mark again after that night, and I deleted Tinder immediately. I still get chills thinking about that night, and I always wonder who or what was in that apartment with us. Needless to say, I never used a dating app again.